As a property owner or manager, you know that keeping track of rental payments is critical for maintaining cash flow and managing your business effectively. However, relying on scattered receipts or vague notes can lead to confusion and complications down the line. That's where rental ledgers come in. By tracking every payment and expense related to your rental property in a clear, organized manner, you can stay on top of your finances and make informed decisions about your property. In this video, we'll cover the ins and outs of rental ledgers, including how they work, what information to include, and why they're essential for property owners and managers. We'll also provide some tips on how to create and maintain your own rental ledger, whether you prefer a digital or paper-based system. So if you're ready to take your property management game to the next level, keep watching to learn all about rental ledgers. What is a lease ledger for a rental property? As a lease ledger, which is also called a rent ledger, rental ledger, or even tenant ledger, is a document that breaks down your rental income for a particular unit. If you have several rental properties, a tenant ledger can be one of the most versatile reports you can have for ensuring everything is going smoothly. Now, what makes a rent ledger special? In most cases, you're not using a rental ledger for a particular lease period. Instead, your rent ledger will cover historical payment records for everyone who occupied your rental unit. Rental ledgers also show if there were any late payments by a particular tenant in the past, as well as payment patterns. So how does this information help you? Overall, it will help you solve disputes and misunderstandings a lot faster. A rental ledger comes in handy when they want to evict their tenant for non-payment of rent. Since the ledger includes information about monthly rent payments, the property manager can use it as a supporting document. Is a ledger the same as a lease? While some people call it a lease ledger, make sure you're not confusing it with a lease agreement. A lease is a document that outlines the terms and conditions for a rental property, business/residence. It will have information about the parties involved in the rental, security deposit conditions, late rent, and more. On the other hand, a rental ledger is a document that will show the monthly rent payment history for your rental unit. You can use a rental ledger as a supporting document whenever you're trying to solve disputes, but if you want to outline the terms of your rental property business or residence, you must create a regular rental agreement. Do property owners need one? You don't need to have a ledger for your rental property, but it can certainly come in handy. Relying on receipts or messages isn't convenient for you to keep track of all of your rent payments, especially if you're managing several different rental units. Here's a list of reasons why a landlord's rent ledger may be an excellent option. Tracking income and expenses. The primary benefit of a rent ledger is that it allows the property manager to keep track of each rent payment. You will have information about each monthly rent transaction you've ever received, which allows you to organize yourself much better. Tracking poor payment patterns. Ultimately, not all tenants are responsible when paying rent. Some people take too long to pay, don't pay in full, or have any other issues surrounding payments. A rent ledger can help you notice if there are any poor payment patterns. If you notice your tenant has been lagging tendency when paying rent, then it's a sign you must approach them to solve the issue. Keep in mind that you're not supposed to approach tenants who only have payment issues occasionally. Rent ledgers are more useful when the tenant has a tendency to miss rental payments. Solving discrepancies. Whether you're collecting rental income yourself or have an agent doing it, you will always have access to updated banking records. However, if you also have a rent ledger, you can use it to compare that data to the one from the banking records. So what does that mean for you? Ideally, your bank records and rent ledgers should have matching information. If you find any discrepancies, you can either check to see where the problem is or ask your agent what happened. The sooner you solve the problem, the better. Using the document as support. Evictions are a stressful time for any property owner, especially if they're doing it for non-payment of rent. If you notice that your tenant delays payments too much and you want to make a complaint or evict them, then a rent ledger would be proof that they're in fact not meeting the payment requirements. On the contrary, if you don't have a ledger, the tenant can simply argue that they've been paying on time. If you don't have evidence to claim the contrary, then you may have an even harder time evicting the tenant. So, what are the benefits of a lease ledger? More control. As mentioned before, you can use a rent ledger to keep track of your rental income, but you can also use it to track your expenses and security deposit payments. If you, for example, want to use the security deposit or rental balance to pay for repairs or maintenance, then you can add all of those expenses to your rental ledger and know how much money you're dedicating to that. On the other hand, if your property was built on a mortgage, you could also adjust your rent ledger so that it keeps track of mortgage payments. Finally, a rent ledger will allow you to track how your tenant is performing surrounding rent payments, and it will allow you to take action faster as soon as you notice a problem. Better chance of getting a loan. Some lenders ask borrowers for proof that they will be able to manage the loan during the specified period. If you have a rent ledger, you will have proof that shows you have a property that receives regular income. Moreover, if you had that ledger for some time, then that will certainly help in proving you can manage your requested loan. Being able to identify windows of opportunity. Having a rent ledger allows you to know the true potential of your rental property. If you, for example, notice that your unit hasn't been without a tenant for years, that could mean that it's in high demand because of its location, upkeep, or any other reason. On the contrary, a ledger can also help you identify problems. If you notice irregular or poor patterns in your rental income, that could mean that your number of defaulting tenants is high, which translates to a poor tenant screening job. Now, what if you notice your tenants moving out too soon after moving in? This could mean there's an underlying problem with your property, like poor cleaning or maintenance, unattractive design, or something else. In any case, a rent ledger will allow you to notice trends or problems with your unit, which will allow you to make the necessary improvements. Potentially increased property value during sale. If you decide to sell your property in the future, you can use your rent ledger to negotiate a better price. Some property owners, for example, can use their ledger to show the buyer that their property is full of tenants that pay rent on time, which increases the value of the property. So, who can get a lease ledger? Tenants, investigators or owners, also buyers or lenders. What should you include? It depends on your needs. You can download a rent ledger template online and adjust it to your needs, but overall, here's what you should include. The owner's name or landlord's name, physical address of the property, the type of property, the number of bedrooms or bathrooms, lot size, property zoning, and unit size or number, the tenant's name, lease start and end date, monthly rent with due date and date of payment, security deposit amounts, and additional payments. Remember that you can add as much information as you want to your ledger to make it even better. Remember, staying organized is key to running a successful rental property business. With a rental ledger and the right tools and resources, you can manage your rental properties with ease. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more valuable insights and tips on rental property management.